this video will be the first in a series I will be calling Social Symbiosis. And in this series, I'll be looking at the relationships and interactions between different groups in society. In this video, I'll be looking at the relationship between the lower, middle, and upper classes. Typically, people think of the upper class and the lower class as natural enemies. However, I would disagree. I would say that they have more of a mutualistic relationship, like that between the shark and the remora fish. For those of you who are unaware, the remora fish are the fish that cling to sharks, they clean them, and they receive nutrients from their waste. This is very similar to the relationship between the wealthy and the poor. While it might seem cruel that the remora fish have to live off the waste of the shark, when you look at it, it is actually not so. They receive protection and an ease of access to resources that they would not have otherwise if they did not cling to the shark, and the shark gets the benefit of having its waste disposed of and having its scales cleaned. So as you can see, it's a mutually beneficial relationship between the two entities. And in real life, the wealthy, they create employment opportunities and they need people to work for them so that they can increase their wealth, and the poor need someone to give them wealth and give them employment opportunities. So when you combine these two, they work very well together and they get along great, because each needs the other to survive, and if one disgruntles the other, then they're both kind of fucked. And now, you might be thinking, how does the middle class fit into this dynamic? And the answer is simply not very well. For an ease of thought, I divide the middle class into 3 tiers. I'm going to approach these tiers slightly out of order. The first tier of middle class are those who come from the working poor and a working class background and have worked hard all their lives to manage to save and invest and just pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get into the middle class to be able to provide for their children, to go to college, live a more comfortable lifestyle than they did, get a better job than they had, have a more of a white-collar job instead of a blue-collar job, potentially. And now within the next few generations, they'll transition into either Tier 2 or Tier 3 middle-class people. Tier 3 are those that will likely become wealth creators. They'll become wealthy, they'll start their own businesses, go to college and get a functional degree, get something that will help them boost further up in their career, and eventually go into a higher class, go into the upper class, and then become wealth creators themselves and help someone like their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents pull themselves up from the bootstraps and eventually become middle class themselves, which will then hopefully create more Tier 3 middle class, which will become more wealthy, which will once again go into that cycle of creating wealth. And this group is able to do this because they've retained the values of their working class progenitors. This allows them to have that working spirit, be able to go out there, work hard. They know how much their parents, their grandparents struggled for it, and they can appreciate that and will go on to new heights. And finally, we have the Tier 2 middle class, which are arguably the group that causes the middle class to stay out of the upper-lower class paradigm. These are the people that I would call middle class leeches. Once a family becomes Tier 2 middle class, it is very unlikely that they will escape from this trap. People who come from this tier will be perpetually middle class and will despise this, as they see their fellows rise into the upper class, and those in the upper class succeed in leaps and bounds. Jealousy will fill them, who will go to college for things like gender studies and insist on gender quotas and race quotas. They're that kind of people. Most of this tier of middle class are also socialists, and subscribe to the Bernie Sanders logic of it's okay to tax the wealthy at 90%. They advocate for free college and claim that it's to help the poor, when in reality, it's an excuse to subsidize their bad decisions and poor career choices. They advocate for an increase in minimum wage without realizing how much it would hurt the poor, because despite their constant virtue signaling, they don't know what it's like to be poor and wish to deny working poor individuals their own sense of agency. They are the people that perpetuate the myth that the rich and the poor are natural enemies, while using welfare and other social programs to keep the poor poor and complacent. They do not wish to raise the poor up, they simply wish to tear down the rich, to their own level or even below them, because they do not want to put in the work to raise themselves up. Thank you very much for listening. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you have not yet subscribed, please do. I appreciate it very much. Feel free to share the video and leave any comments, questions, or criticisms down below.